Okay, hey guys, we've got Megan Leyba here.
Hi.
And I'm Susie Jelnick, and we're located at the MAT headquarters in Denver, Colorado. We're going to be doing somewhat of an informal webinar today. We're going to get to know Megan, and we're going to kind of hear her story, how she got involved in MAT, and kind of just like, I don't know, answer your guys' questions that you guys sent in, and answer more questions that we had from the last webinar that we hosted. So yeah.
Awesome.
So you ready?
Yeah, let's
okay.
do it.
So we're first going to make sure that people can hear us. So go ahead and let us know. There's a chat box on the side, so you should be able to, like, if you're running into any technical difficulties, you can check in there. There's also a place to enter in questions if you do have questions on the fly. And as we're kind of getting started here and people are starting to log in, we just kind of want to know where people are from. So if everyone can just send in where you're from, let us know. Love to hear from you. Yeah, awesome, cool. So we'll just give everyone a minute here.
How's your coffee?
It's good. Ooh, the hazelnut, that is good. Mix it up for you.
Thank you.
Everyone has a coconut. Oh, wonderful. Okay, yeah, we got people from Toronto. That's exciting. We do have a hub up there with Eric Seifert, if you guys have heard of him. He's great.
Host classes up there all the time, which is really
Always
cool.
good, yeah. We got Minnesota. That's awesome. Okay, this is dorky, but we also our school that we do collaborative classes with is out of Minnesota, so that's really awesome. Welcome. And let's see, where else? Denver, nice, good to see you. How's it going? California, awesome. Awesome. St. Louis, that's cool.
Nice. Well, Midwest.
Well, Midwest, we got a lot of Midwest.
Back to my roots. Grew up in St. Louis.
Oh, no way.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Did you ever visit the Arch?
All the time.
Cool.
Every year. Class field trip.
I've only been there one time. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so everyone can hear us okay? We're doing well with that? Okay. Oh, Florida. Hey, is it warm down there? It's getting kind of cold up here.
Yeah. It's chilly today.
Cool, cool. Okie dokie. So if you guys are running into any issues, again, just let us know. We're going to try to take care of that on the fly. Otherwise, we will be sending out a recording of this after the webinar is over. Give us like a couple hours. We're going to edit it and put it together for you. We're also going to upload it onto YouTube. So if you also want to access it there, you can. Okay? Cool. So let's just dive right in.
Okay. Let's do it.
Megan, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Susie?
Doing well. Thanks. Do you have a busy day today?
I do, actually. Yeah, it's pretty busy. I've had 4 clients today, and I have a couple more this afternoon. So
cool. Nice. Yeah. We also have a class going on. So Greg, the founder of MAT, he's hanging out literally right behind us, and he's teaching a class. So that's kind of fun. The energy in the office is really awesome. So lots of students from all over the place are coming. So I want to start off just hearing like your story and essentially like how did you get involved with MAT, and I'm going to be kind of interjecting sometimes and just making sure that everyone gets to hear. So
okay. So I grew up in St. Louis, like we just said, really a competitive softball player. I was a pitcher, and I ended up actually dislocating my kneecap when I was 15. Yeah, it was super painful.
In a game?
In a game, yeah. It was one of those, it had just rained, you know, Midwest rain shower, and the ground was really muddy, and I was batting, and I hit the ball, and my knee turned, and my foot didn't, and just collapsed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did it come back, or did you have to like go to the doctor to get it put back in?
Yeah, so I went to the emergency room because I couldn't put weight on my leg or anything. It actually had popped back in while we were like waiting for things to happen. So they weren't 100% sure what had happened initially.
Okay.
You know, teenage female athlete, their initial assumption was ACL tear.
Sure, that makes sense.
Wasn't. It was the dislocated patella. So, yep, I started, once I figured out what it was, started physical therapy. Enjoyed the concepts of it. You know, it was very new to me. Okay. I hadn't had any injuries up to that point, and so it was very interesting to be kind of in the rehab world.
Totally.
Unfortunately, I didn't have any relief. I was going 3 times a week for about 2 months.
Okay.
And I still had all my pain, most of my swelling. I didn't have all my range of motion.
Huh. What kind of things were they having you do?
A lot of.
Do you remember?
Yeah, it's been a while. A lot of stem.
Oh, sure.
Stretches, exercises, things like that.
regaining strength, or
not
really lose that much? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't lose that much strength to begin with, but I also just couldn't get into the positions that I needed to get into to really assess whether or not I had lost any strength.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure you guys have all like experienced something like this where you're not really exactly sure why it's not coming back. And if you do, totally raise your hand, like let us know, and we'd love to talk through that. So keep going.
Yeah. So did the PT thing for a couple months, and their next solution was surgery. And you know, as a 15-year-old athlete, the last thing you want to do is have knee surgery, or any type of surgery, really. And they talked about how they really weren't sure what the outcomes were going to be. I would definitely be in a knee brace for the rest of my life.
To play sports, or all the time?
Potentially all the time, depending on the issue.
Okay.
The thing is that my a normal knee structure, you actually have, it's called a patellar groove in your femur that the patella runs in, and it gives it a little bit of a bony structure and a little bit of a bony support.
Do we have that on the skeleton?
Yeah, we do actually. Ooh. So you can kind of see right here.
Yeah, I think they can see it. It might be kind of bright, but you can maybe.
There's a little bit of a groove that the patella kind of sits in, and it gives kind of a bony landmark or blockage on both sides to just help protect and keep that kneecap in place.
Totally.
I actually don't have that. So my femur is completely smooth. Okay. So it's really easy to dislocate my patella because there isn't that additional structural support there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was what they wanted to do, is go in and actually
add one.
And add that.
Okay. And then is this the same on both legs, or is it?
Yeah, I actually do have the same issue on both legs, but I've never had any knee issues on the left, which is really interesting. And now from an MAT standpoint, I know that it's not the structure that's the issue. It's actually the muscular support wasn't there.
Sure.
On the right side.
Okay.
On the left side, it was fine. And so it becomes less of an issue when the muscles are doing their job.
Okay, so replay this scenario with me. You're playing softball and you're a pitcher. So the forces that you're putting through that one side, like an overuse, I know I always hear Greg say stress trauma overuse. Can you talk through like your specific scenario and why, because both your knees are built the same, why was it that one dislocated in that moment? Is it because of that stress and that overuse?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I was a pitcher. I started pitching when I was in second grade. So at this point, it had been a lot of years that I was pitching really continuously. And my right leg was my drag leg. So you have to, when you're pitching, you always have to have contact with that back foot on the ground.
Okay.
And so dragging it on that repetitive, stress over and over and over, just led to overuse, whether it was stress, whether it was, a perfect storm of things, but those muscles neurologically just weren't working the way that they were supposed to.
Sure.
And then you put it in a situation where, there's that muddy field and the torque of turning when you're hitting and everything like that. And the muscles weren't able to tolerate that trauma at that point.
Yeah. Okay. So before we go on with your story, I want Megan to explain the difference that when we say like strong versus weak, I really want Megan to kind of talk through that, because it is different for an MAT practitioner versus like your normal use of that terminology. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So when MAT is talking about strong and weak, we're talking about the neurological connection between the brain and the muscle, that signal that's flowing back and forth. And so when something's weak, it means that signal, for whatever reason, stress, trauma, overuse, is inhibited.
Yeah.
And the muscle isn't getting the feedback from the brain's not getting the feedback from the muscle. And so things just aren't working appropriately.
Totally.
When something's strong, we're saying that muscle neurologically is getting the signal that we want it to be getting.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that's going to be definitely different than when somebody comes in and they're like, oh, I can bench press like 5,000 pounds.
Right.
Which
I'd like to shake.
I'd like to shake that person's hand.
Yeah.
But and so it's interesting and it's fun as a practitioner because you get to see the differences. I mean, I have like an 80-year-old woman, very frail, who we can test things and she can just hold these positions because neurologically those muscles are firing.
Yeah.
I can get a professional athlete, or like a young athlete, an 18-year-old high school football player who thinks he's like, awesome. And I can do the same test that I did on this old lady and
they won't be able to hold
can't hold it. And because it has nothing to do with that physical strength.
Huh. Okay. Cool. Cool. So on that note, let's get back to your story. So when did you essentially like learn about MAT? You went through this PT training and it wasn't really working for you. And not to say that PT isn't helpful, it totally is. But for Megan's scenario, it wasn't quite individualized enough, I guess to say, like for your particular situation. So like the protocol that they wanted you to go under during that time period, it just didn't fit for you. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it just wasn't the right modality for my particular injury.
Sure.
You know, they focus a lot on the knee because that was my issue going into it.
Okay.
So when surgery was the next thing on the table,
that's right. Yeah.
Starting to look for other options. And, you know, thankfully my mom's brother is actually Greg Roscoff, the developer of MAT. And so we didn't live out here in Colorado at the time. We were in St. Louis. And so it wasn't, we had the arch. So it wasn't like my mom's first instinct. We had never gotten worked on before.
Sure.
Like,
didn't really know what it was.
We didn't know what it was. Greg was just really, I think he hadn't even started the first class yet. So he was definitely in the developmental stages of MAT.
And he was just treating clients. He wasn't like teaching.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, you know, my mom was like, hey, what do we do? Do we do surgery? You know, what do you think? And he goes, well, actually, like, let's try this MAT thing. And actually, thankfully and coincidentally, my dad actually got transferred to Fort Collins, which is about an hour and a half north of Denver.
That worked out.
A couple months later.
Yeah.
So it worked out really well. So we just put off surgery. I continued with PT just to try and build some strength in the meantime. And then we moved out here, and after 2 sessions, really, I had all of my range of motion, all of my strength, all of my stability. I could sprint, pull, and even better than that, I had that subconscious confidence.
Totally.
Yes.
That
like I can do this.
Yeah.
Where I didn't have that, you know, they're like, try and push it. And I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
But after that, I mean, I threw my knee brace in the trash. I'm like, I don't need this. Like, I'm good to go.
Good for you.
And I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
It was so different
from
PT. You know, instead of just looking at the knee, it really was looking at the body as a whole and the stresses and the forces that I put on my system. And so looking at things like the way that I drag my leg, well, what impact does that have in my hip and in my trunk that may be causing issues down in my knee?
Yeah.
And so that was really what kind of pulled everything together. And then as I continued to get worked on through high school and college, I watched a lot of my teammates get injured and not be able to continue playing or couldn't play at the same level because, you know, I went to school in Minnesota. All you Minnesota people.
Me too.
And there actually weren't any MAT practitioners in Minnesota at the time.
Okay.
Which is really interesting now because not only do we have a ton of MAT practitioners, but now that we're linked with Broadview, there's a lot going on in Minnesota.
And we have PTs that went through our MAT program that are actually out of Minnesota. So shout out to you guys.
Yeah. And so there just wasn't access to MAT for my teammates when I was in college. And I was like, I want to be able to help, you know, these young athletes that have really put a lot of effort and dedication into
their sport and into their identity. I mean, like you said, that confidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
And so that's what, you know, the day I graduated college, I'm like, all right, let's sign me up.
Cool. Yeah, cool.
And I started learning MAT.
So what did you end up going to school for?
So my degree's in biology. I really wanted something that was going to give me a pretty broad foundation of the human body.
Sure.
And then eventually I went on and I have my master's in health fitness management.
Oh, okay, cool. Cool. And then MAT.
Yep. And then MAT, I've been through all levels of the MAT process or education system. So we have our Jumpstart, which is our just kind of introductory to MAT.
Yeah.
We have our specialist program, which gets a little bit more involved. A little bit more into the thought process, a little bit more into the skill set.
Yeah.
That's how you would actually become a certified MAT practitioner is through our specialist program.
Yeah.
Once you're certified, not only for continuing ed, but also for to work towards the next level in your MAT education tier is our master level.
Sure.
So became master level certified and then became RX level certified, which is the top tier of our education program.
Cool. And just so you guys know too, Megan and Greg, they do research, like, I think it's 3 times a week for about 2 hours in the morning. And I kid you not, I mean, these guys are like working like crazy. It's so fun just to like, they're constantly making things more and more precise in terms of muscle testing. It's really, really cool. Okay, two things that I heard you say that I want to go back to. And one of them is, Greg always says the isolated parts comment. Can you talk to that quote that he always says? You didn't say it yet, but I want them to hear it. And how does that kind of relate to somebody's like body?
Yeah, so basically, you know, our body's this integrated system, but you're only as strong as each individual movement or each individual part of the body.
Yeah.
And things are definitely going to compensate. And that's the beauty of the human body, is that if we can't do something, our body's going to figure out how to make it happen as efficiently as possible.
Sure.
In the short term, that can be a really good thing because it helps us continue life.
Totally.
In the long run, it kind of snowballs into different things. So if I can't do a certain movement, like let's say for whatever reason, my hip flexors don't want to lift up as much, but I still have to sit in a chair or walk or anything like that, then I may get more motion coming from my trunk to try and get the same positioning, the same arrangement.
Yeah.
You know, because like this can come here or I can come down.
But you wouldn't necessarily notice.
You wouldn't necessarily notice it.
Yeah.
But over time, now your trunk flexors are working harder because they're trying to not only do everything they're supposed to do, but they're also trying to help out all of the hip flexors that aren't doing their job.
Sure.
Which over time becomes a stress on their system.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you go to work and there's 10 people doing a job, and then you go to lunch and only 8 people come back, but the same job has to get done.
Yeah.
And then those 8 people have to work harder.
Yeah.
And then those 8 people go home at night, and 4 of them are like, I'm not doing that much work.
Yeah.
I'm not going back tomorrow. So then you go back the next day, and there's only 4 people, and the same amount of work has to be done.
Sure, totally.
And the same thing happens in your muscular system. Like, your body's still trying to make things happen, but muscles get mad and they get overworked, and they can't, again, that neurological connection just can't keep up with the stress that's placed on them when they're doing more than just their job.
Totally.
And so issues tend to snowball over time.
Okay.
Where very rarely is it one specific thing that really is the issue. That's the issue to begin with, but then by the time people get in, you know, it's like, okay, well, this is kind of where we started, but because of that,
this came up.
Yeah, these guys have been stressed. These guys have shut off. And then you get to a point where the body's like, I can't do it anymore. And that's when it starts throwing out pain. It's like, you got to stop. You got to do something here.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, so actually, that's funny. I remember a student asking us, or someone on our webinar last time, and they had a very specific question, and I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget.
Okay.
And we're not quite going over questions yet because this is just super specific to this. So can you share MAT's view on lower back pain and how we would typically think through how to resolve that? And it doesn't necessarily, like, again, you said the word hip flexor. So things like, where would that come from? And why would someone that works at a desk all the time experience back pain similar to someone that's like working construction? Or like how, you know, I know each individual is so different, but like they're experiencing this lower back pain. How would you solve that?
Yeah, that's what makes MAT really unique, is that it's more based on trying to figure out why somebody has pain versus just dealing with their symptom. Because back pain can be caused from so many things. It can be caused from hip flexors. If your hip flexors can't do that job, and then your trunk flexors can't really do it either, eventually the body's going to try and keep you out of these positions. So it's going to start tightening up that low back, trying to keep you out of this kind of flexed position, which over time, those muscles are constantly then contracted, which is going to create tightness and issues in that low back. So leading to that, could it be the hip flexors? Could it be the trunk flexors aren't doing their job? So the same thing, those low back muscles are trying to keep you out of that position. I mean, realistically, our foot is the first thing that hits the ground, and we take steps. You know, people are like, I got to get my 10,000 steps in every day. But if the foot isn't working appropriately, every step that your body takes, you're transmitting forces inappropriately up the body. Because if the foot can't absorb the forces of the body on the ground, you do that repetitively all day, every day, something else has to deal with that. And that can work its way up the chain, and it can be a back thing. You know, I've seen people where they have shoulder stuff, and it creates a feeling of low back pain. So it really can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
Which is really, it makes the MAT sessions more individualized.
Yeah.
Versus just saying, oh, you have low back pain, I'm going to put my blinders on and I'm going to just look at low back pain.
Sure.
I'm going to look and say, where's this coming from?
Totally.
Based on your activity, injuries over time, things like that. And then that's where the MAT thought process, which is what makes MAT what it is the way that we put together these sessions. That's where that comes into play. So for like, just talk through what an MAT session look like.
And really quick too, when she says individualized, I mean like truly, really, like every time Greg always says, you always want to look for what you can't, or he wants to know what his clients can't do, because that's what's keeping them from doing, specific things. Like that's what's going to show up when they're working with their muscular system. So talk me through what a session would look like.
Yeah, so we start with our CAM exam, which stands for Comparative Assessment of Mobility.
Okay.
And really what we're doing here is we're comparing both sides of your body. We want both sides to be symmetrical. I'm not worried about what your motion looks like versus my next client's or the client after that, or what a book says
or
it
like
should look like.
Typical someone my age or my weight or something.
No,
okay.
I'm just looking at, does both sides of your body move the same?
Okay.
So like if I'm looking at your legs and one leg rotates into here and one leg only rotates into here, that's going to be an issue. Ideally, they both rotate the same amount, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be an issue.
Okay.
Now, so what we're looking for is kind of, we call it an elephant. What's the biggest one of those limitations that we see?
Sure.
And that's what the body is saying, start with me.
Yeah.
Because what happens with this limit, most modalities are kind of looking at everything on this side, saying that they're tight and they're not allowing us to get into this motion.
Because we're feeling it.
Because you're feeling that tightness, like, ooh, yeah, like that, it's not going to go any further.
Sure. Okay.
So most modalities are thinking stretch, massage, foam roll, whatever you need to do to open up that motion. We're actually over here saying that the muscles that pull you into this position aren't firing appropriately. Back to that neurological connection.
Yeah.
That connection between the brain and the muscle with these guys on this side of the axis isn't working the way that it's supposed to.
Totally.
So as a protective mechanism, the brain is actually sending a signal over here saying, don't let me go into this position. Yeah. I don't know what's happening. I'm not getting the appropriate feedback.
Right.
And I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's like when you walk out on ice and your whole body kind of tenses up.
That's a good example.
Yeah, your body senses the instability of the ice and it tightens to protect you. The same thing's going to happen with when the brain's sensing instability here. It's going to tighten to protect you. So what we're really trying to do here is keep everything, or then we're looking at these guys to see, are they firing?
Yeah.
So once we find this elephant, then what we're going to do is we're going to test every muscle that moves you into that position.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say we're doing hip flexors.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, the hip flexors aren't firing. We're going to start testing things like psoas and iliacus and rectus femoris and see if those muscles are firing the way that they're supposed to.
Right.
If they test weak, again, that neurological weakness, then we're going to actually go in and try and turn it back on. Mm-hmm. And we do that we have one of two ways of doing it. Either our positional isoangular contraction, which is like an isometric, or it's called a DFMAT, a digital force application of the muscle attachment tissue.
That is a long one.
Yeah, that's a big one. But basically what that means is we're just pushing on where the muscle attaches to the bone.
Okay.
And what both of those things do is basically act like jump-starting the battery in your car.
Okay.
We just get that signal flowing again.
Right.
And then we can go back, test the muscle again, should test strong. And then by the end, we can go back and recheck that range of motion. And most of the time that range of motion opens back up. Not because we've fixed the tight muscles or relaxed the tight muscles, but we've created stability to the brain. The brain's now getting feedback from these muscles.
Right.
And it's saying, cool, I'm good to go. I don't need to protect. We've essentially melted the ice.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Okay. So then over time, so you've got one session, you've got a client come in, you work on their hip flexors, and they feel really great. They come home, they go through their normal week, their normal whatever, until you see them again. How often is it how often do you see clients? Is it like, I don't know, just give me an example.
Yeah, so I usually suggest when people come in initially that I see them once a week for 4 to 6-ish weeks. That gives us a good kind of, we get to get in front of their issues at that point.
Yeah.
And then from there, I always tell people when we get going, like, don't want to see you all the time.
Yeah. I want you to feel good.
I want you to feel good. I want this to be more like, the maintenance in your car.
Yeah.
You just like every once in a while you take your car in for a tune-up. It's basically the same thing. So once we see people once a week and then they're starting to feel better, they feel good for that whole week, then we say, okay, let's skip a week. Come in 2 weeks and let's see how you feel.
Yeah.
And then we do that for a little bit, and then we go to 3 weeks and 4 weeks, and we try to find more of a maintenance, which tends to be once a month-ish, sometimes every 6 weeks.
Right.
Just to check in and keep them feeling good, keep them doing what they want to be doing.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Anything else on your story that we didn't cover that you wanted to go over?
Don't think so.
Don't think so? Okay. Do you want to jump into questions?
Sure, absolutely.
Cool. I don't know why I just paused. Hi guys. Okay. We already talked about yourself and how you're awesome, how you found out about MAT. So what were your biggest successes and challenges during your first year as an MAT practitioner?
That's a good one. Because definitely when you're at that point, after you're certified, you're still learning.
Yeah.
It's still a lot of practice. You start seeing some different or more difficult clients, situations, harder challenges. Because when people are going through the education program, we definitely want to have them practicing on healthy people. So then you get into the point where people want you to help them, right?
Totally.
It's not practice anymore. And so the biggest thing was feeling confident with my skill set and confident that I could help people. And that really was it took time.
Yeah.
The next thing was really getting a good grasp on how to explain MAT.
Yeah.
And make sure that my clients understood what I was doing. That was the thing that I found.
That's a really good one.
The biggest issue is I wasn't great at explaining it, and I wasn't great at saying like, hey, listen, you need to come back next week.
Yeah.
I would kind of do like, well, if you ever want to come back, I'll be here.
Sure. You're so nice and polite.
Yeah.
Okay, well then that's actually a really good question. So, if you were to give a quick little elevator speech on what MAT is, what would you say to people?
Yeah, so I get a lot of like, what do you do? Because when I drop my kids off at school and I'm in yoga pants every day, where do you work? I want to work there. Yeah. It's like an awesome job. It is an awesome job. I usually start with, it's muscle activation techniques. It's kind of like injury rehab and prevention.
Yeah.
And I like to focus more on the prevention side of things. Obviously, people tend to come in because they have injuries and pain and discomfort, and they're not able to do the activities that they want to do.
Yeah.
And then from there, I kind of go into, people are like, oh yeah, I do that. Like, well, it's actually different. It's a little bit more individualized and specific. And then I go in and I tell that ice analogy. The tightness, why we're looking at these guys, how we test that, and basically what we just talked about. That's what I explain to people.
Yeah.
And people are like, that's cool. That's different. I like it.
Huh, fun. Do most people, do they know about MAT, or is it kind of still new?
No, it's definitely still growing.
Yeah.
So I've been a practitioner for 11 years now.
Yeah.
And it's definitely grown a lot in that time frame.
Yeah.
Every year there's more and more people that know about it, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So
I think what's neat too is, I know I've said this twice, so but regardless, MAT is such a good adjunct to so many different modalities. And, like you just said, like, oh yeah, I do rehab. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. But like you were just saying with PT and, how can MAT be used as a secondary tool for PTs? And it's used all the time. We have plenty of people coming through our programs that are experienced in the medical world, and they want to add this to their toolbox. And I think it's been really, really cool to see that. Chiropractors, massage therapists, personal trainers. Greg has really developed a program that really can cater to a lot of those different types of therapists out there that are really looking to kind of bring their practice full circle and really help their clientele. And I know, Megan, that you do MAT all day long, but there are other people that are able to kind of integrate it into their individual modalities, which is really, really rewarding that I see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. The next one has to do with that, but we just went over that. Let's see. Who is your typical client and how do they typically find you? That's a good one.
Yeah, so most of my clients tend to be referrals from other clients.
Okay.
You get to a point where people feel good and they want their friends to feel good.
Yeah.
And they're like, you got to try this thing.
Right.
And I have a lot of clients that come in and they're like, I don't know what you do, but so-and-so said I got to be here.
Right.
But as far as my typical client, there isn't really a typical client.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, my clientele runs the gamut from like 13-year-olds to 80-year-olds and weekend warriors to, moms trying to like
get in and out of the car without paying or something.
Yeah, and take their kid in and out of the car seat. And,
sure.
People who are, pushing, 50, 60, they're hard life, the activities that they've done over time are starting to kind of wear on their body.
Yeah.
And they're not able to do things at the same rate that they used to, but they still want to.
Yeah.
And just kind of everything in between.
Yeah. I always love hearing when we've got clients come in and they're just like, I got to pick up my grandchild. And I was like, cool. Because like, I don't have kids, I don't have grandkids. And I'm just like, that's great. But then when you think about it, it's like, they weren't able to do that before because they were in so much pain. They had they had back pain. And it's like, I honestly just got goosebumps. Like that seems like such a simple life thing, but it's so important to like bring people, I don't know. I just feel like that's really rewarding, which is another one of my questions, or one of these guys' questions, which is, in terms of like how rewarding this all is, like the impact felt, what would you say in terms of your day-to-day work? What really brings you that? Like, do you feel totally fulfilled? Like, where are you at with that?
I love my job. I love my career. I'm excited every day to go to work because I get to not only, your clients become your friends. Like you spend time with people and you learn about their lives and their families and, especially coming up into the holidays, like their holiday traditions and stuff like that because, you have conversations with people and I love being able to do that and, kind of get a glimpse into people's lives. But also, when they say things like, I was able to walk up the stairs for the first time without pain.
Totally.
Or I just felt confident in my body for the first time in years.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I could take a step and my knee wasn't going to buckle. Or I was able to go outside and play football with my son, who's been wanting me to do this for 5 years, and I've never been able to.
Sure.
It's amazing. It's so much fun to be able to see that.
Yeah, I totally get that. And by the way, Megan makes really good chocolate for her holiday tradition, so get on her good side. Okie dokie, let's see. What advice would you give someone considering MAT as a career, especially if they're coming from massage therapy, physical therapy, personal training, etc.?
Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing is the start of
Sorry, guys, emails are coming through.
Is the start of the education process. There's a lot. It's a very big paradigm shift from what most people have learned or dealt with in their life.
Right.
And so the biggest thing as, seeing fellow students while I was going through the education program and now being on the other side and being an instructor and watching where students sometimes struggle is coming in with all of the knowledge you already know.
Yeah.
It is different. And sometimes it needs to be, okay, I have this, I'm very successful at, my massage business or my personal training business, but taking the time to kind of say, okay, I'm going to leave that outside and I'm going to come in and I'm going to just think about MAT right now.
Yeah.
And go through that and kind of see it almost with like a blank slate.
Sure.
And then go back with it and say, okay, how does this fit in with what I already know? Versus being in class and trying to fit it in while you're also trying to absorb. That seems to be a very big challenge for people.
Yeah.
Versus just take what you're getting in class and then go back and kind of figure out how to mesh things together.
See how it meshes together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not only figure it out, but just like,
because it may be different and everybody's, combination of things is going to be different. Some people, I know some people who are, went through the entire physical therapy realm, were very successful physical therapists and don't do any physical therapy anymore. They just do MAT.
Yeah.
Because that was what worked for them. We have other physical therapists who do a great job of integrating the two. So it really comes down to kind of what works best for your environment, your clients.
Sure. Your practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Again, just like allowing the client to come full circle with their treatment. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, will you show us an example? Will you
Sure.
show me?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, this is the last question. We're gonna get this one going. So I'm gonna pull this computer back. I'm gonna try to go kind of slow here. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I'm gonna hop on the table. Does that look good, Megan?
Yeah.
Go that way, maybe a little bit. Okay.
Okay, so the biggest thing when people come in is that CAM exam that we talked about. The body's going to lead us exactly where we need to be. So there's a lot of different things that we can do for just the camera angle and everything. We'll do a little bit in her lower body and see if we can't come up with anything that's happening. Go ahead and rotate your foot in for me and relax. Rotate this foot in. Relax. A little bit harder on that side.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see in the camera, but her leg is like shaking trying to make that happen. Go ahead and rotate out for me and relax. Rotate this side out and relax. Okay. And I want you to go ahead and lift this leg up for me as high as you can and relax. Move back down a little bit. Try and keep this hip down on the table and lift your leg up for me. Okay, and relax.
It's definitely harder keeping the hip down.
Yeah, that's the thing is people like to cheat and compensate to try and make things happen. So you definitely have to keep an eye on them and make sure that they don't get to do that. Go ahead and bring this leg up for me. Oh, okay, relax. Again, she is shaking pretty bad. And I don't know if you guys can tell the difference between this side to side. Go ahead and lift this side up again for me. And relax. And then lift this side up. She's working hard and it just doesn't want to go.
Oh, my back too, like my lower back is coming off the table.
Yeah, because you're still trying to make that motion happen, but your muscles are saying we can't do this.
Yeah.
And so everything else is trying to cheat and compensate to give you more motion.
Right, okay.
So this is where I would be starting. I mean, this is a pretty big, like I said, an elephant. This is a pretty big discrepancy that we have side to side. So I would start working and testing everything that moves her into hip flexion. Mm-hmm. And then ideally at the end, we would check this again and this leg would be able to move a lot better.
Yeah.
And then you shouldn't feel the back working and everything trying to make that motion happen.
Okay. So, I sit at my desk all day.
Yeah.
So, like, could that be part of the reason why I'm experiencing some lower back pain is because my hip flexors aren't.
Absolutely.
Like what you were saying before.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Because your body still needs to sit in your chair.
Yeah.
But your hip flexors are saying, I mean, ideally your hip's getting to 90 degrees to sit in a chair.
Right.
You were getting 30
right.
on that side, maybe
Right.
40
right.
if we're generous.
Right.
Which
okay.
means those back muscles, especially on that right side, may be saying,
Yeah.
you need to get out of that position. So if you've been sitting for too long, you may feel some tightness, just your body trying to get you up and moving and saying, there's an issue here. There's a reason why you can't be doing this.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, you guys. So we're going to conclude this webinar, and we're hoping that you really enjoyed it. We know it was a little bit more informal from the last one, but if you guys, have more questions, feel free to email us. I'm not sure if Megan said, but on the education side, if you're just curious, you want to know more about our education programs, you can email info@muscleactivation.com. You can also email support at muscleactivation.com, and you can learn about our programs there. You can also learn about practitioners in your area if you're interested in getting worked on. And honestly, just in general, if you have questions for us, please, we'd love to hear from you. If you have ideas for this next webinar and you want to hear on a specific topic, we'd love to get it out there. We just want to, get people excited and, kind of bring more people into our community because we love MET so much. And so we just want everyone to know about it. And then lastly, on the Broadview side, I'm not sure if you heard me mention at the beginning, but we do have an online education program that we didn't really speak to. And that program is offered through Broadview University. We did a collaboration with them. And if you want to learn more about our online programs, that you can find on Broadview, but you can also find it on muscleactivation.com as well. So any and all questions, just shoot them our way and we'll get them answered for you. And then obviously, thank you, Megan.
Thanks for having me.
You're awesome. So, okay, guys, we'll talk soon. I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. Thank you.